Good morning. I call us to come together in prayer, meditation, or quiet. As I ring our bowl today, my hope is that the vibration will resonate in each of you and begin the process of settling our anxieties and bring us together as a community of faith. Faith in our values and principles and our ability to put them forth in the world. Good morning again, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalists of the Chester River. We come together here in our sanctuary to explore our unique spiritual journeys and learn from each other. I hope that you will find words of wisdom and supportive friends here today. Welcome to all here in our sanctuary and on Zoom this morning. Welcome to Michael Casey. And thank you for sharing your music with us. It was a lovely beginning. I would also like to welcome Reverend Paul Boothby. Thank you for coming. Reverend Boothby is a retired UU minister. He comes to us this morning from Tunis Mills with his wife, Krista. And they left their dog at home, but just so you know how similar to us they are, they have a dog at home named Mia. Thank you for sharing your words of wisdom this morning. All right, I have one announcement, and that is, please don't forget our annual soup dinner, our soup supper event will be held on Friday, December 13th at 5:30 right here. You can see Jane Hardy after the service today to buy your tickets. Okay. All right, and now let us light our chalice. The words are in your order of service. May the search for truth be within us always. We light this chalice for love. May the love for others be strong in our hearts.
Good morning. In times of uncertainty and fear, when so much is at stake for all of humanity. We as people of faith return again and again to our core commitment, to manifest the eternal love that transcends our individuality, binds us to all people, and empowers our best selves. This is our reassurance. This is our strength. This is our hope. Let us rise in body or spirit and sing together hymn number 108, My Life Flows On, in endless song. Please be seated. As we gather this morning, as over 1,000 other Unitarian Universalist congregations across the country are gathering this morning, we look to words of hope. You'll find in an insert in your order of service. Please join me as we read together these words, "Justice is our prayer." We gather today with sacred intention to declare that justice is our prayer. We affirm in covenant with the beloved community that it is possible. Not here, not quite yet. The seeds have been planted time and again, and we remember all those who went before us, who made beloved community a dream that could be realized. Justice is our prayer. May our time of service together continue to water the budding trees of our diverse interdependence. May our time of service give air and nourishment to the parts of our collective spirits that need to grow and thrive, that embrace equity as a known way of being. Justice is our prayer. We affirm in covenant with the beloved community that it is possible. May it be so. And so let us not debate today the means of our collective salvation. The planning and plotting of elaborate fixes to society's ills can be done at another time. But let us rather in this hour remember more deeply that we are holders of a vision of a world where all people live in peace. All will have enough to sustain them. The strong will not exploit the vulnerable. Let us believe that our efforts, whatever they may be, must be devoted to creating heaven on earth. And indeed, that together humanity has the power to create heaven on earth. We've certainly proven ourselves capable of the alternative. And so we rest this hour in the hope that has animated the religious lives of our forebears for untold generations. This is the crux of our faith. This is why we keep trying. This is why we need each other. It is good that we gather together.
One short and one tall. This is the time of our morning that we share our joys and concerns. Please feel welcome to come forward and share, and I will light a candle for each sharing that we bring forth. And let me begin this morning by lighting a candle for all those who are suffering from the devastation of worry and anxiety. Please feel welcome.
This is my joy this morning, and I hope you all notice these, well, I know you do, these magnificent arrangements that Vida brings almost every time. And this is the kind of place where I find joy that will help me weather these days, as well as Michael's music. Anyway, thank you, Vida, who refuses to have her name in the program, saying that she does the flowers. But anyway, thank you.
One of the bright spots was the election of Sarah McBride in Delaware. Some of you will have read her memoir, Tomorrow Will Be Different. And she will be the first openly transgender person in the United States Congress. And I used that memoir in my class on women in politics in 2019, and she Skyped with us. And I had the pleasure of hearing from several students in that class rejoicing at her election and remembering the significant conversation that we had with her. So that was a bright spot.
So this is a more lighthearted joy. I wanted to thank Diane for enabling Jean Michael to be Stephen Hawking for Halloween, because she was able to provide us with the wheelchair here, and that just absolutely made his Halloween. And then the Monday after Halloween, he came home hopping on one foot, was sent home early, and we had already returned the wheelchair, but very excited. The next morning before we needed to get him to school, Tom was here and we were able to get the wheelchair so he could go to school without hopping on one foot. So thank you.
It seems like many things are coming negatively to me. The minor one is I busted my dentures. It's going to be another week with toothless. My niece's daughter had her house burned down, her apartments. And my son, who was in a motorcycle accident about a month ago, was talked to him not too long afterwards. He was fairly cognitively okay. And now I hope it's the anti-seizure medication, because he definitely has a problem with his cognition. And then I found the election a bit disappointing also, as we all do. Let's hope now that moderate Republicans will step forward and help us through this time.
I was going to do something about Lee a little bit more optimistic and lead with the fact that he came home Friday night. It's been close to a month since he got into this motorcycle accident on I-5, or just merging onto I-5 in Seattle. He had a serious motorcycle accident in 1998 when he was working at Microsoft, and ended up selling motorcycles for 3 years before he had recovered enough to be able to do the technical writing that he had been doing. This time, I don't think it's going to be as serious, because he did sound so much better when we talked to him the time before. And this time, he was more or less yes or no, and maybe a couple other words. But he is on anti-seizure medicine, and that slows your brain down. And he already was in a situation where he was, because of a brain bleed, was having some trouble remembering things and pulling up names and finding the right word to use. So I'm optimistic it'll take time, I'm sure, but that he's going to come back yet again. And coming home from the hospital after being in intensive care and neurology and in hospital rehab, to actually have his dog at his side again was a wonderful thing.
I'm just going to say the Mid-Atlantic Symphony is, okay, that's right. The Mid-Atlantic Symphony has concerts over the Eastern Shore. Usually they're in Ocean City and Berlin, but oftentimes they have them at Chesapeake College, and this afternoon they're doing Beethoven 1 and 5. And if anybody's in, I know you can get tickets, they're never sold out.
Also on an optimistic note, it was a pretty good opening weekend for the show I'm accompanying and music directing over at Churchill, Ride the Cyclone. It's showing this afternoon and for another 2 weekends. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Yeah, Beauty and the Beast. That's in December.
What's the name?
Of the show at Churchill? Yes. Ride the Cyclone. Mm-hmm.
It's out there, I'll say that.
Yeah. Thank you. Let's take a moment of silence for all these spoken joys and concerns, and those that are on your heart that have not been spoken. Blessed be. And now is time for our offering this morning. Thank you all for your generosity of spirit, of time, and of money today to facilitate the good works of our church. And now, Reverend Paul Boothby.
Thank you, Kim. So my reading this morning is from the Reverend A. Powell Davies, who served All Souls Unitarian Church in Washington, D.C. in the 1950s. His services became so popular that they were actually broadcast live over radio, and several Unitarian fellowships were begun around clusters of folks that met to listen to his services. This is his reading about the American commitment. The American commitment is to universal justice, the rights of all people, not the special interests of some. It is a commitment to fair play, to patience, to tolerance, to neighborliness. It is a commitment to the common good. It protects the opportunity of each with the good of all. It is compassionate, humanitarian. It believes in humanity and in its future. It is the golden rule, do unto others as you would have others do unto you. It battles prejudice and false opinion. It seeks the truth. It is opposed to barriers of exclusiveness. Its principles are universal. It despises cowardice, including moral cowardice. But it has no use of obstinacy, inflexibility, and intolerance. It prefers honesty to cleverness, kindness to self-sufficiency, goodwill to narrow-minded aims. If anyone asks by what right I define these characteristics as American, I point them to those Americans the rest of us revere as great. I say that America is defined by the moral progress she has sought and by exemplars, not by the hour of perfidy and by her little-minded, greedy foes. And if anyone tells me that these characteristics are more than American, that they are universal, I will reply that that is why they are American. Because this nation was not founded on the divisive and the separate, but upon the rights of all people. Can we restore these standards? Can we seek again the touch of greatness? The future will depend upon the answer, upon what takes place in the American heart and conscience. Because a nation, like an individual, must have a soul. Despite a few sprinkles this morning, you may have noticed in the lawns, gardens, and farmlands here on the Eastern Shore that we're in the midst of a dry spell. Actually, more than half the country is currently experiencing very dry or drought conditions and exceptional heat. The life-giving rains that we count on have not come as expected. The world has changed. The climatic systems of our planet will no longer behave in quite the same way that we are used to. We must adapt to a new reality, rethink how we plant, how we cultivate and harvest. Now, such fundamental change is hard to adapt to. It's not the world that we grew up in, not the world we observed when we were young and learning how to live, what to expect. It has come slowly in human terms, until now we are approaching what feels like a time of crisis, when the errors of the past will have caused irreparable harm. And we have good reason to fear what will come in the near future. And so it is, too, with the realm of political power. The global patterns of social progress that so many of us observed as we were growing up, as that we anticipated would continue, seem to have dried up and blown away. We feel a desiccating wind of intolerance and fear sweeping over the nation. This is not the world we grew up in. In the world we knew when we were young, there was evidence that people of goodwill and charitable spirit were working to overcome the moral desolation of bigotry and hatred. We worked hard to sow the seeds of racial equity. We secured so many rights for people of color, for women, for GLBT people, and people with disabilities. The waters of justice seemed to be flowing into the land like an unstoppable stream of hope and progress. And we were able to convince ourselves that there was a consensus of a common good that should extend to all people. This, we believed, was the American way. This is what I believed was the American way. As I observed these principles in my Unitarian Universalist communities and in my parents. My father served in the Army Reserves for 30 years. Happy Veterans Day. And like so many veterans that I have known, he understood that work as helping to secure greater peace. That is certainly a point worth debating, but nonetheless, this was one way he felt he was serving the country. He also worked in the field of soil and water conservation, helping America live more mindfully on the earth. Mom, for her part, supported the arts in public schools as a civilizing force. And both my parents served the Unitarian Universalist Church in many capacities. I believe they felt a duty to work for what was good, what was right. A great part of that inspiration, I'm convinced, came from growing up in Unitarian, in my mother's case, and Universalist, in my father's case, congregations. Those congregations taught that God's love manifests only as we embody it in our relations with all people. And hell is what we allow to happen in this life when humanity fails in our collective task to make heaven a present reality. William Ellery Channing, the father of American Unitarianism, wrote about this feeling of spiritual duty to embody universal love as the greatest gift of the divine to humanity, as a revelation of the holy in the human mind. He wrote, "All mysteries of science and theology fade away before the grandeur of this simple perception of duty which dawns on the mind. And that perception brings one into the moral kingdom of heaven, one in whom the conviction of duty is unfolded becomes subject from that moment to a law which no power in the universe can abrogate. One forms a new and indissoluble connection with the holy, that of an accountable being. One begins to stand before an inward tribunal on the decisions of which one's whole happiness rests. One hears a voice which, if faithfully followed, will guide one to perfection, and in neglecting which, one brings upon oneself inevitable misery." Close quote. That feeling of being beholden to serve that which is right is truly the spark of the divine within us. It rejoices in the face of love and generosity, and it recoils in horror at acts of injustice, avarice, and violence. And today, many of us fear that the next few years will bring many incidents from which our sense of rightness and duty to the good will recoil in horror and revulsion. Many Americans are in real peril for their lives and their livelihoods. The world has changed. The world in which my father could serve in the military and vote as a Republican, as a fourth-generation Universalist, as a religious liberal, that world has been undermined and broken in the last 40 years. There are fewer and fewer people of goodwill in positions of power prepared to work together to protect civil rights, to protect the environment, to support public education and other efforts for the common good. In my youth, many people believed in the idea that America was going to continually improve in terms of justice and health, education and understanding. And though the process was slow, it really seemed like the momentum was unstoppable, that it would continue. But perhaps that was just wishful thinking. And insofar as it ever did bloom in the hearts of Americans broadly, that dream seems to have withered. We have left that world, it seems, on the other side of the horizon of time. And we now wander in a desert of anxiety. The familiar landmarks of civil society seem disfigured. The social landscape doesn't make sense to us. The truth is, there are, just as there have always been, too many Americans who do not believe in and do not want a society of equity, tolerance, fairness, and justice. There is a reason that we have always had to organize and struggle for justice, for equity and compassion. We have had to work for these things because they were not the status quo. We who believe in fundamental values like love and respect for human dignity and the revelations of science and compassion, it seems we are not the majority in this country. Yes, there is good in all of humanity, but most people do not live as if that were true. Too many people see anyone outside of themselves or their group as unworthy of their concern. They care not for the billions who share this world with them, or even for the planet itself. And so they resist the efforts to make life more livable for all people. Compassionate progress is not inevitable. And now power will be shifted into the hands of people who despise justice and fairness and equity and compassion. A man has been elected who has previously used the power of that office to undermine democracy, to steal the people's money, to spread distrust, and weaken the structures of accountability. There is real reason to fear a resurgence of repression, of racism, sexism, and religious bigotry. There is real reason to anticipate that certain wealthy and powerful people will continue to dismantle the social safety net and cause more suffering. Now, we also know that such problems have been part of the human society for millennia. It's why Jesus spent so much time talking about feeding the hungry. And Muhammad insisted that his followers give alms to the poor. And Buddha taught that the highest spiritual aspiration was to expand our capacity for compassion. The prophets of all religions have taught us that the greatest good is the ultimate unity of humankind in the light of that transcending mystery and wonder of the universe. And so, although I am outraged by the manipulation of the masses by the wealthy and the powerful, my faith must not be grounded in anger. And although I am fearful of what will happen to immigrants and people of color, women, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, and all queer folk in the coming years, my faith must not be grounded in fear. And although I am deeply saddened by the prospect of the elegant, if imperfect, structures of our civil society being dismantled or disfigured to serve only the wealthy and powerful, my faith must not be grounded in despair. Faith is an aspect of being human that evolved to help us cope with times of uncertainty, when we feel powerless, when it seems we can no longer take peace for granted, when we can no longer take the orderly process of civil society for granted. Many of us are grieving the loss of our faith in the inevitability of social progress. This idea has been repeatedly undermined by events which have pulled us backwards. How is it even possible, we wonder, for humanity to choose a backward direction? And yet we see it all around the world in the rise of totalitarian and patriarchal political leadership. We can no longer assume that the social infrastructure of government, of civic organizations and free associations, or the American aspirations that undergird them, that these lean in the direction of fairness and goodness. Apparently, it is true that democracy must be rebuilt in every generation. We must adapt to a new reality, rethink how we plant, how we cultivate, how we harvest. Humanity is, I believe, inherently inclined toward goodness, but we are frail creatures, easily wounded, and too easily swayed by easy answers. We're so vulnerable to our unexamined fears of people different from ourselves, too vulnerable to our fear of change and fear of our own irrelevance. And so we need to be grounded in something larger than ourselves. The spiritual aspirations of the ages are still as relevant today as ever. So perhaps we can trust again in the power of collective action, emboldened by love, shaped by justice, and reconcile ourselves to the need of this moment to mend once again the damage done to our social fabric. To take up this duty is an act of faith. We aspire, we dare to aspire to love our neighbors as ourselves. We dare to think that a social reality of true mutuality is waiting for us to make it so. It is why we hold at the center of our values the power of love. It is our commitment, even amidst the setbacks. And we must commit to embodying love in our lives because it is not always easy. We get discouraged, we get distracted, we have fears, biases, blind spots, spiritual laziness, peer pressure, and pressure from the larger society to conform to individualism and avarice, putting the interests of the self before the interests of the whole. It is hard work to love your neighbor as yourself. That is why it has always been and always will be an effort and an act of faith, giving ourselves to that work of reaching out with generous hearts, believing even in the midst of doubt that love and caring and forbearance will move this moral universe along that arc toward greater justice and equity and happiness for all people. This is why we strive to embody in ourselves and in our institutions the ways of fairness and accountability, of acceptance and humility. Because we have faith that all these facets of the greater love have the power to overcome the lesser, more selfish ways of human behavior. And so we here gather in community to remind ourselves and to remind each other that we shall overcome someday. It is a leap of faith, especially in times like these, to dare to believe. But we know deep in our hearts we shall overcome our own shortcomings and those of our society. Let us sing this hymn of hope together. Please rise in body or spirit for hymn 169 in the gray hymnal, We Shall Overcome. So now I guess it's your turn. Kim? Kim will come around with the microphone so folks on Zoom can hear you.
Who's getting it?
So in what you were saying, I want to just add in the idea that we should look like swag wearers, like the MAGA hats. All of us, especially because we're white and privileged in that way, can pass as people who voted for Trump, which means we are safer, right? But we need to get into the trenches, in my opinion. You can tell me to go, pack it away. But in my opinion, with the people who are not safe. And the only way to do that is to look like them, to represent them in the way that we carry ourselves, how we dress, pins, hats, shirts, anything that says out and loud and proud that we would never have voted for this man and that we are a safe place for the people who are not. Because whenever we saw a MAGA hat, remember how that felt. Remember the fear that it put in you. It made you behave differently. We have that same power. But what it does mean is that we have to be a little bit unsafe to do it. And for all of us, you got to make that decision yourself. But it is worth it, and it's the only way that we're going to mobilize, is to know immediately that we're on the same team.
Good point.
Kind of tagging on to that, there was a moment of solidarity in Redner's parking lot this week. A woman pulled into a parking space, and on the back of her car, she had Justice Sotomayor's famous statement now, I fear for democracy, therefore I dissent. And I went up to her, and I said, I very much appreciate that sticker that's on your car. And she went like this, and we both just looked at each other and sadly grimaced, and then walked away. And I think, kind of tagging on what you're saying, in those moments when perhaps we see something, someone's wearing something's statement, that we acknowledge, yes, I am with you on that. So thank you.
I hope we're at a point to have some meaningful dialogue. I happened to have a situation last week at Denton Senior Center. I sat around with 4 women who had differing views, both on abortion, on politics, and so many things, and religion. But we spoke for over an hour respectfully. I would love for us to have more of dialogue like this. Hatred won't do it, and separating from the other. We're in this world together. I hope there's some possibility that we can come together.
Hatred and fear are our enemy.
Well, your sermon was just what I needed. I really appreciate it. And I wondered if you would share it, a hard copy of your sermon.
All right, if somebody tell me how we can figure out how to do
Okay,
that.
yeah. Well, thank you.
Send it to Darlene. It'll be on YouTube. Well, yeah, in a video.
But I'm talking about a hard copy.
Yeah,
I'll give you the email.
okay.
Anyone else?
I'll also post it on my Substack, so.
Okay. We can continue our conversation after church, too. So I have some closing words for us this morning, and I'll just introduce them to my own experience Wednesday morning. I woke up, didn't know the outcome yet. I couldn't bear it in the night. Walked around for a little bit in that space of unknowing, and hope. Watch the news, my husband and I. And then, he set off to his work at the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, knowing that many of his people were going to be grief-stricken. So he set out to be present to them. And then myself and my girls from their different places set off to our work in education, grief-stricken. And in the day, I have to give my husband such kudos. He was our solace during the day. He sent us messages all day. And one of them was actually a letter from his boss, the president of the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. And I want to quote a piece of that letter because it was very focused on a group of people who are environmentally focused. They're focused on the environment. So she was speaking to that, but her words really spoke to the broader concerns that we all have. And they were very useful to me and my girls. And so I want to share these words with you from Hillary. And it goes like this. And send you out into the world with this for us all. We now get to decide how we show up, what we value, and who we are. Over the coming days, weeks, and years, we will have a choice to stay connected to each other and the communities we serve, a choice to be courageous in the face of challenges and uncertainty, a choice to be a voice on issues in our communities and stay credible on science, and I'll add, on justice and compassion. As I look around this sanctuary at each of you, and those that are also on Zoom, I can't see you, but I know you're there. I have faith in our values and principles and our ability to put them forth in the world. And so may it be so. And let us now extinguish our chalice with the words that are in your order of service. Go in peace. Join us for coffee and conversation.